Hi, folks, and welcome back. I'm just setting up my actual audio here. Bear with me.
All right. Well, now we're back in the chips again. It's about 5 in the morning. I get up about this time usually, not every day, but usually to do exercises. So um, I figured it'd be a perfect time to talk about yet another movie. I do know what I'm going to name my series now. It's going to be called Cigarette Burns. So, hey, there you go. And in honor of that, I'm going to go ahead and smoke a cigarette. Why? So Eli can talk bad about me. Sir, are we stopped? Yes, sir, we're stopped. Oh, that's great. 5 minute break. Smoke them if you got them. All right. So we're talking about another perennial classic. All of my movies that I will be talking about will be in the top 500 of movies of all time. Okay. So just to clear that up right away, these are the top 500 movies that we know right now. Obviously, if you watch this 20 years into the future, a lot of this will have changed because I don't talk about specifically the very, very top ones. Those have been talked to death. What I'm more interested in is what goes on behind the scenes of the movies that are in usually the 300s to 400s, somewhere in there. Now, obviously, I talked about No Country for Old Men, but that's because it's a brand new one that is in at least the top 20, maybe the top 25. Not 100% sure. I'd have to take a list of things. So I'd have to weigh in a lot of other films before I could make a definitive list. And I will never make a definitive list. Why? Because I don't want to argue it. All right. So, what are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about the second Blade Runner, or what is called Blade Runner 2049. Okay. There it is. I got it in Ultra 4K high def. I have a high def player, thanks to my stepfather. Thank you very much. And, well, my mother too. But, and I have an Ultra 4K player. Now, again, if I was to put this in any particular number sequence, it would be in the low 300s, is basically where it would be. The first Blade Runner would be in the mid 200s, so maybe 275, 280, somewhere in there. And this one would be in the 300s, somewhere in there. And the only reason that this one is not superior to it is because of the technical mastery that was done in the first one, and it is based off a very, very good book by Philip K. Dick. Now, this one, in my opinion, is superior. It's my personal favorite between the two. I like the first one quite a bit, but it's not as good as this one. It's not as crisp, it's not as clean, it's not as sonic, it's not as beautiful. There's so much that goes on in this film that makes it one of my personal favorites too. I really enjoy this film in a lot of ways. I could go into great detail about why I personally enjoy it. One is that it has an all-star cast. Every single person that is in it fits their role absolutely perfectly. There is nobody that does not fit their role. There is nobody that overacts, underacts, does anything like that. It's all good quality, high quality acting. All right. So let's talk about, again, because I brought up another science fiction one, and this will be the last science fiction one that I bring up for a while. So let's talk about why I talk about science fiction again, just to reiterate. The reason I talk about science fiction is because you can talk the most about progressive states of the country, of the world, of science, of life, of anything in science fiction. It's a almost blank slate to talk about whatever you want, because you set it, for some reason when we set it into the future, it doesn't seem like it could ever happen, but it can. And that's what we think about, is that this can happen if X happens. You go all the way back to H.G. Wells' Time Machine, a great book. Not too terribly good of movies have ever been made of it, but they've certainly attempted them. But the novel itself is about the class structure. Okay, I said in the last, I guess you'd call these podcasts. I don't really care what you call them, but in the last one, I said that I was going to touch briefly on some lenses. Well, one lens that they use to describe film is a social, classical, social structure lens. Okay, it's referred to in academia as the Marxist lens. Okay, now they mostly use it for television. However, there are exceptions to that, and H.G. Wells' Time Machine is definitely one of them. He was a socialist by nature, and he wrote that specifically to talk about social issues. The idea if mankind went on and on and on, eventually there would be two classes: the underbelly that ate the rich. You know, maybe that's where we get the phrase "eat the rich." I'm not 100% for sure, but it would definitely make sense, because literally the underclass eats the rich, who are just basically deer for them. They just are. The only reason that they're better than them is that they're above ground at this point. I can't remember how far into the future that's set. Maybe 6,000 years? I don't really remember. But it's a very, very good book, and I highly recommend reading it. Get it on audiobook. Those are perfect ways to get an entire novel without having to put much effort in flipping pages and getting absorbed into text. Okay? They can set tone. They can, their voice is very soothing. It's very nice. If you ever work out, if you ever do anything, they're perfect books. They're perfect things to listen to. Because, how many times do we need to hear the same song while we're exercising? Put a book in. Learn something. But anyway, back to Blade Runner. So, what makes this one my personal favorite is that, again, you have a much different outlook in this one than you did in the other one. The first one was all about the idea that how do you distinguish someone that is real and is not, okay? And that is basically abandoned in this one. They go straight to everyone is unreal to begin with. So, because the main character played by Ryan Gosling is, in fact, a robot. I mean, and they're very frank about it. They're not trying to hide it. In the Philip K. Dick novel, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the rumor is that Philip K. Dick was trying to say that Harrison Ford was a robot the entire time. But it was never really clear, and I think in the director's cut, in the original, Ridley Scott actually made a poke at it, saying that he was, in fact, a robot. By the origami that was left, blah, blah, blah. But regardless. And again, there are so many things to like about this film, okay? First of all, if you're going to buy this film or rent this film, get it in 4K. This is something that is absolutely needed to be in 4K, okay? This is something that is visually stunning in every way, shape, and form. There is not an unvisual element in this film, okay? It's a beautiful story about a robot that's in love with really another robot. And it's sad and bleak, but it makes you think about the totality of how our social systems operate. Are we not really loving someone that's wearing a mask to love us, and vice versa? So there's this huge undercurrent of that's going on. I mean, that's just one of the hundreds of things that go on in this film, which is why I like it more. It will never be critically analyzed more or better than the first Blade Runner, but it is, in my opinion, superior in every way, shape, and form to the original Blade Runner. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about maybe one or two more things related to the film. So we know that he's a robot, and he does meet Harrison Ford, who has gone into hiding. Okay, the juxtaposition of this film stands on the fact that Harrison Ford had a child with the cyborg, and they created a living cyborg child. It was half cyborg, half human, okay? And the world would have destroyed it if they had found out, so Harrison Ford got rid of the child and lived in exile, and his wife died during the childbirth process, etc., blah, blah, blah. So, you have like this fundamental point that is made by mankind, which is what I think Ian Malcolm said best, which is life finds a way. But besides quoting Jurassic Park for a movie that is for Blade Runner, which is in many, many ways superior, with the exception of the direction. Because in the original Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg did a wonderful job with direction in that. Especially the scene with the dinosaurs where they're stomping in, or the T-Rex, excuse me, where you have that famous, boop in the thing. That's who doesn't remember that watches it. It's impossible not to. But you have beautiful women in it. If you're into that sort of thing, I certainly am. There's so many things to like about this film. I highly recommend that you do watch this in 4K on the biggest screen possible. This is the exact reason why I think theaters should still exist. This movie really codifies to me why theaters are still important in this culture and why they are still around. We don't even have video stores anymore, but we still have theaters. Well, why? Because of movies like this. I mean, to be frank with you. Now, obviously, Marvel plays a huge part in that. And I'm not going to sit here and argue that the last couple of Marvels weren't fantastic. They really were. But this is a movie that challenges you to think while entertaining you. This is mostly the canon I stick in when I talk about films, are films that are both challenging and are entertaining. Okay? Because you start to get up into the hundreds and things, you're going to find about 50% of them are not really that entertaining. They're just challenging. Okay, Sergei Eisenstein and Battleship Potemkin and October and different things like that, they're certainly fascinating to watch. October, Sergei Eisenstein's film, has Lenin in it, and it's about the October Revolution in Russia before it became communist Russia. It literally has Lenin in it. He is the star, okay, because this was made by Soviet film, okay. Now, obviously, once, oh gosh, what was his name? The terrible guy. What's that guy's name? Killed a lot of people. Joseph Stalin. Once he moved in, all of them left, including Eisenstein. They all left. They all abandoned that because they knew that the fun was over. And that's really when the totalitarian government truly stepped in. And many, many innocent people were killed. In fact, they don't even know how many were killed. So that just tells you how well communism works. Yeah. But anyway. But again, these are not, they are very visually appealing because they're silent films. Okay, but as far as you being able to truly enjoy them, like I would, probably not. Probably not. You would definitely say, hey, this is a visually stunning film. But there's so much contextual information and historical information that goes behind it. There are exceptions to that. I think Charlie Chaplin's City Lights and Circus certainly can entertain children still. Charlie had an innocence to him that is childlike, at least on screen. I don't know if he ever carried that into adulthood. I don't think he really did. But at least not that I've read about him. But on screen, he was a childlike person. He waddled and did all that Charlie Chaplin stuff that we even still know now. So we definitely could identify with him and all imitate his waddle. I'm sure when kids walked out of the silent films way back in the 30s, they were waddling like Chaplin and doing all that stuff and blah, blah, blah. So entertainment has always been an important value in cinema. And that's why I want to state that's why I spend time talking about also the entertainment side. Because it is vastly important and it is vastly underrated. Okay, we just had the last Oscars where, things won that don't make any sense. Again, they have the lowest ratings that they've ever had, and they still choose to do the things that they've always done for the last 3 years, which are completely inept. Okay, they're like Major League Baseball when they took away the salary cap and then they stopped worrying about the steroids. They're so far gone now that they're probably not going to come back. It's just the way it is. But that's fine. That's okay. We all appreciate certain aspects to the Oscars. I would hope. Whether it's costuming that goes into the Oscars. The glam teams. On Instagram, a lot of these actresses were talking about their glam teams, which is really cool and really important and all that stuff. Because you're creating your image to the world. And they are your assistants in that image, and they're very important. So that's cool, and I like that. And, there's other aspects to it besides that. They show a lot of old films, old Oscar history. They're building an Oscar museum right now. That's what I saw in a preview, which will be fascinating, to walk in to be able to see the ruby red slippers and all that kind of nostalgia about good quality films, too, You're not just seeing what is supposedly Batman's real car. It's like, I'm sure it's not. But okay. But regardless, I highly recommend that you watch Blade Runner 2049 and compare it to the first one. And give me your honest opinion. Do you think it's better than the first one or not? And why do you think that? Because I would love to hear your opinion. Okay. Other than that, I'm going to go get to exercising. So thank you so much. Have a great day.